Are you thinking of traveling to Barcelona? Well, I just got here for the very first time, as well as my first time ever in Spain. And in this video, I want to give my first impressions of what it's like to be a tourist visiting Barcelona in 2024. I've been to 25 countries over the last few years, and I'm a Canadian who speaks Spanish, but I have never been to Spain, predominantly through Latin America. And in this video, I just want to go through my thoughts and experiences of my first time ever visiting Spain, my first time ever visiting Barcelona. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, welcome back to Lifting Nomad. My name is Alex. And again, in this video, I want to go through my first impressions of traveling to Barcelona in 2024. Over the last few years, Barcelona has become one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. And at the same time, social media has started to become a little bit flooded with tourists experiencing a bit of hostility and not necessarily having the best time when visiting. I'm sure you've all seen the videos of people getting blasted with water in the streets of Barcelona, the locals protesting. So I wanted to go into this with an open mind and see kind of what it's actually like to have boots on the ground here in Barcelona in 2024. So let's start with the first thing, safety. I stayed in La Rambla, which is one of the most popular tourist areas in the Gothic quarter of Barcelona. There's of course a lot of other areas to stay, but I wanted to stay somewhere where the nightlife and the restaurant and the bar scene was pretty popular. This is a very popular tourist area, super easily accessible from the airport. All you have to do is really follow the metro signs that also have the bus symbol when you're in the airport. And then you end up taking the Aero bus to Plaça de Catalunya, which is in the Gothic quarter. Doesn't take longer than I would say 30 minutes or so from the airport to get there. It was super cheap. I think I paid around 7 or 8 euros to get me downtown. From there, I actually walked to my hotel, and I was staying at the Hotel España Ramblas, which I would say was a little bit more expensive than you needed to pay. There definitely were cheaper options, but I liked the idea of being in a safe, clean building while this is my first time experiencing the city, where I did end up switching to a hostel later in my stay. It is worth noting this area is very infamously known for being touristy, but also one of the most common places that pickpockets do occur. And while I was going into this, I was made aware of a lot of the common scams. And like I said, I have traveled extensively throughout Latin America. That tends to be some of the least safe countries there are for traveling in terms of like pickpockets and corruption and getting robbed. Places like Colombia, Mexico, that kind of thing. Despite this, I never really felt like I was on edge walking around in this neighborhood. It was, it was clean. There's people everywhere, whether that's in the middle of the night or during the day. I think even one night, I'm pretty sure I was the drunkest man in Spain. And when I walked home from the nightclub, I never even felt a little bit on edge. There was not really anyone like following me. It just didn't really feel as dangerous as people had made it out to be. Again, this is just my personal experience. I know people do get pickpocketed all the time, but just being out and about and surrounded by people, it never really felt that sketchy. With that said, be smart, like keep your phone ideally in like a crossbody bag in front of you with like anything that's super valuable, your passport, your wallet. Keep your belongings close when you're in this area. While I was here, I actually did read from one of the hostels I was staying at that a girl had her laptop bag stolen from a chair at a table she was sitting at. Could that have been just a little bit of negligence of not paying attention to your stuff? Yes, but also, it does happen, I would say almost on a daily basis. I would say as a well-rounded traveler, I never really felt on edge, but that's not to say you will have a different experience. Number two, let's talk a little bit about the cost. I do think it was actually relatively affordable, generally considering like Barcelona is a world-class city that is known for its nightlife, known for its food scene, known for its vibes, for its beach clubs. Like this is a really famous place to go to. I don't think it was as expensive as like the same caliber of other cities in Western Europe, like places like London, Paris, Dublin, that are on that sort of level. It's relatively affordable. Now, that being said, let's talk a little bit the specifics. For food, I did eat pretty well, I will say. While I was staying in the hotel and the hostel, now I'm in an apartment where I can actually cook, but while I was there, I didn't have any access to like a kitchen or resources to cook at home. So I basically was eating out anything that was prepared from like a grocery store or eating out at a restaurant every single day. So that being said, in my experience, generally like 5 to 10 euros was enough for a nice quick breakfast. For lunch, I would say you're looking around 10 to 20 euros. For dinner, I would say 10 to 30 euros. Now, of course, this is leaving room for you to go to places like Disfrutar, one of the #1 restaurants in the world, where you're going to be spending, 200, 300, 400 euros for a meal. But at the same time, you're not obliged to go to these places if it's not in your budget, if it's not in your plan when you visit. Now, I do want to really emphasize again, do not eat or drink on the strip of La Rambla from Placa de Catalunya all the way down to the end. It is insanely overpriced for what you're getting. Literally, if you go 1 or 2 streets in any direction off La Ramblas, you're going to get much better quality food, much better prices. I actually did go to one of these just to see how expensive it really was. And generally, like a beer in most of these other pubs I would say like 3 to 5 euros. I got one on the Ramblas for a basic copa, like a cup, like it's like a pint of beer, let's say, 750 euros. Could have been 850 if I hadn't chosen Estrella, like the local beer. So yes, it is very overpriced for what you're getting. Now, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the drinks. Beers were definitely the most affordable of anything in the entire city. While I was trying to talk to locals and get the idea of what people were actually drinking, beer was by far the most popular option for people to drink. It's very cheap. Generally, like I said, like 2 to 5 euros. If you're going to a grocery store, it's even cheaper. You can get a 12 pack for like 5 to 6 euros. So you can definitely save a lot of money if you are buying your alcohol ahead of time. I would say wine is typically pretty mid-priced in restaurants, anywhere from like 5 to 15 euros, depending on the type of wine you're getting. But again, at the same time, you can go to a grocery store, a convenience store, a supermercado, and get a bottle of wine for 3 to 4 euros for an entire bottle. So again, you are able to save a lot of money, but if you are going out to restaurants to eat and drink every time, it's going to be expensive. Now, cocktails were definitely the most expensive. At most restaurants I went, you're looking at least like 10 euros for a cocktail, all the way up to like 15, 20 euros. And I'm a Canadian, so that exchange rate is like 1.4x. So very expensive drinks. So that's, I think, where I was able to save a lot of money, because I was just drinking beers or I was buying them ahead of time at like a convenience store. All right, number 3, let's talk about things to do. Barcelona is, of course, a massive world-class city. Even after a year, you would really still have things to do in the city. There's, of course, a lot of things that are like the must-sees and the recommended ones that everyone would say you go see. And I'm just going to kind of explain like what I would do if I could do it again. I will say La Sagrada Familia is worth it every single time. Anyone who comes here, it's, I would say it's almost mandatory to go see this church. This place is insanely beautiful. It's a Gaudí classic, iconic church. Construction began in 1882, and now as of 2024, when this video is being recorded, construction is almost done. Originally, they had projected it to be done by 2026. Now they're saying 2028, but still, we're getting to like the final stages. The interior is basically completely finished. There's just a couple of the towers that need to be finished on the exterior, and then opening the main gate, which right now, when you enter, you're actually not entering the main gate. There's another entrance that will be the main one once it's complete. I will say skip the line tickets are absolutely worth it. When I first got here, I went to the main entrance because I really just wasn't paying attention. I was kind of just walking around. I was in no hurry. I got there nice and early, and I went to the main entrance, and it is chaotic. If you do not have tickets, you're going to be waiting in line, and then they may even tell you to come back when it's your time slot. Instead, I paid like a little bit more, and I had a skip the line ticket at a set time where I met on the back alley. There was a lot less people, a lot less chaos. I met my guide. He spoke great English, took us inside through the back entrance, through like the group tour entrance, and it was just like much easier. And I will say as well, my sister actually did this tour, and she didn't have a guide, and she kind of got lost with what was going on and what this thing was all about and how to get started and like what the actual context was of the church. So I actually really liked having a guided tour, as they explained kind of the history of like Gaudí and how it all started, his role and responsibility in it. He's buried in the crypt below. You'll learn more once you actually do it. But interior of this was one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever been inside. The light reflects off of the stained glass windows, and it shines through, and every time of day is a little bit different. Every season of the year is a little bit different. It is remarkable. You need to see this if you're coming to Barcelona. The other one you'll probably see the most is Parc Güell. I believe it's pronounced Parc Güell in Catalan, but that's Guell. I'll have it right here on the screen. This is another like Gaudí project. It was originally designed to be a super high class neighborhood of like the more affluent families. They wanted it to be like a kind of a gated community experience with the most innovative and highest technology developments of the time, and really just for like Barcelona's most rich and affluent families. Now, I walked to Parkwell, and I will say it is far. It is very, very far, and it is uphill pretty much the entire way. So do not think this is a simple walk. I walked from the Gothic Quarter. I will say it probably took me about an hour and a half to get there. And it was also very, very uphill as you get closer to the park. So if you're not like physically prepared to do this, don't do this. My shirt was drenched. I could have like wrung it out after. It was gross. I felt nasty after the fact, but I had gotten all the way there, and I was like, I'm not gonna stop now. But at the same time, there was a lot of people coming off of buses, coming off of taxis nearby that would have made it a much more enjoyable experience. But at the same time, I typically do try to walk as much as I can when I'm in new cities, average like 15,000 steps a day. And this was no different. I enjoyed the walk, but I'm just warning you, if you're not ready for it, you're in for a treat. Now, this park itself is just truly like a beautiful thing to see. The architecture, the way they've integrated the landscaping into it. It's really beautiful views of like the entire city of Barcelona. You can see all the way out to the ocean. You can see some of the cruise ships in there. You can see La Sagrada Familia. And it's also just a really great photo op spot. So highly recommend going to check out Parkwell. Additionally, I would say one of the best things you can do is just walk the streets. Barcelona is extremely walkable and has some of the most beautiful architecture and just street design I've ever seen. So when I was there, I was just like really vibing and kind of popping around from pub to restaurant, checking out the sites. I didn't really have anything planned. When I travel, I typically try to do like one thing a day that's mandatory, and then the rest is very optional because I like to let life come to me a little bit. All right, number 4 is talking about like the food and drink. Of course, Barcelona, it's a world-class renowned food city. There's people who fly from all over the world to go to places like, again, I mentioned Disfrutar, that was #1 in the world for quite some time. It's amazing. And they have everything from like the nightlife side of things to these, mega multi-level clubs like Razzmatazz and Opium, down to like the Gothic Quarter that has all these tiny little alleys filled with bars that are bustling and restaurants. Then you've got like, my hostel was in Placa Real, and I stayed at the Kabul party hostel, and there's just a whole bunch of patios facing inward to the fountains and to the palm trees. And there's just a ton to see and do from like the eating and drinking side of things. So if you are like a foodie, it does not really get better than a place like Barcelona, to be honest. I will say as well, I also did a tapas and wine tour in the Gothic Quarter, and it was awesome. It was kind of like a nice little way to get used to the neighborhood. I recommend doing something that maybe earlier on in your trip. That way you're more comfortable walking on the streets. Maybe you're like a little bit more familiar with the neighborhood. You know some of these good spots. It was a little bit more expensive. I want to say I paid about 70 Canadian for the tour, but honestly, I had a great time. I met some cool people. We actually ended up meeting like the host of that tour, and he invited us to go on a yacht the next day, or like a sailboat, to go see America's Cup out in the Barcelona, like off the coast of Barcelona, and watch like the sailboats, which was pretty crazy cool. So I always recommend doing like a tour like that. Meet some people on the tour, meet the hosts, ask around for things to do. That's how you're gonna get the most like local and authentic experience. A couple standout recommendations that I found, I'll write the names here, but Cañete in the Gothic Quarter, Dos Palillos also in the Gothic Quarter. That was a Michelin restaurant I did for lunch. That was really cool, kind of Japanese, Spanish fusion. Really beautiful story as well. I talked to the owner and sat there for a few hours and got to know her and how they kind of started. Definitely recommend it. And finally, in front of my hostel in Placa Real was this place called Ocaña, and actually my friend from Holland recommended it. Really nice patio, reasonably priced drinks considering you're basically in the Ramblas, and at night it got pretty wild, so big recommendation for that. Overall, like my summary of this, I think it's a beautiful city. The people were friendly. I will like say it's much more noticeable when you see the tourists who are on these like TikToks and stuff like that being like sprayed with water guns. So like when you're in a foreign country, try to be as respectful as you can. I speak very good Spanish and I spent like years learning it, but even so, you should be able to, speak some entry-level Spanish going to a foreign country. I think it makes a very big difference, and because of that, I was treated fairly well pretty much everywhere I went. I can't say it would have been the same experience if I had only known English. And even then, like, if there ever was a breakdown, especially because a lot of them speak Catalan, and like the signs are in Catalan, some of the menus are in Catalan, which is a little bit different than just traditional Spanish. Anytime I would like break down or kind of run out of what I was trying to say, most of the locals can code switch to English very easily, but try to be as respectful as you can. This is not your home. Try to be quiet in the streets, try not to draw attention to yourself. It's like basic traveling things, but it really does make a difference. Overall, I never experienced any hostility, any issues, any safety concerns. Food and nightlife and drink are top tier. This is a world-class city, and I would love to go back again. Now I'm about to head to Valencia, so I'm stoked to create some more Spain content and see kind of what the difference is between Valencia and Barcelona. But that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully, if it was useful, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. As well, if you are interested in getting my first impressions of Edinburgh and Glasgow, I was in Scotland earlier this summer. These videos are going to be posted right here for you to keep watching. Otherwise, stay tuned as we continue exploring Spain, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.